right, guys, got something special for you today. So we have Dawson, aka DTREN here. Well, which guy do we have today?
We have both.
We have both. Okay, so that should be really interesting. So what I did was I put out a poll on Instagram and I said, well, not a poll, I said, you guys give me the questions that you want to hear. We don't typically talk about enhanced stuff. Most of my stuff is about natural bodybuilding, but seeing as it's a special case, figured, hey, let's let the guys who have actually experienced it talk it through. So the first question that we're gonna go over, how big of a financial responsibility is gear?
I would say it's a pretty big one.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to make sure everything is, up to par, your health, your training, everything you need to make sure you're doing things correctly, it's going to be a big financial responsibility.
When we say big, because everybody has different definitions, are we talking like a few hundred, couple thousand? Like what sort of range are we looking at?
It depends. If you're a pro level bodybuilder, you could do a couple thousand every week. If you are a guy, you just want to dabble in it, you want a good physique, you just want to experience it or look better, with blood work included, you're probably thinking maybe $600-700 a month. Okay. You do everything correctly and you're running mild stuff.
And for you personally, on that spectrum, where would you see yourself being about in a month?
Probably around 1,200, maybe a little bit more.
Jeez. Okay, so I'm guessing the majority of you would consider that to be a pretty big financial responsibility. Dang. All right, next question we got. Ooh, this is a good one. Do you have any regrets when it comes to PEDs?
Yes. My main regret is not getting my training and my nutrition down from the start. The main reason is because I could have made more gains. I could have had more muscle and I could have avoided unnecessary side effects with more knowledge about PEDs. Since I started at 19, I kind of just jumped into it and I was like, I'm gonna do this, nothing's stopping me. And I didn't really have the training down as best as I could. I certainly didn't have the diet down and I didn't know as much as I know now. So I ended up, dealing with side effects I could have avoided. So that's my main regret, is wishing I had everything, I guess, more optimized when I started for better results.
And were you doing that, I guess this is my own question, were you doing everything just off of your own research, or do you have somebody in the background? Or?
So I was doing pretty much everything off my own research, but I had guys here and there that would give me advice that I would ask. So other guys that used PEDs, I would ask them questions and they would give me their advice from what they knew, which wasn't always correct. It was just kind of, this is the way we do things. This is what you do to avoid this or to get this effect.
As a 19-year-old, like doing most of that stuff on your own and figuring that out, that's crazy to me. I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, it was a risk I was willing to take, and I did deal with side effects from that, and pretty much anyone will at that age.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. It's just which ones are you going to deal with is the luck of the draw.
Oh, wow. Man, people are really getting to the heart of things here. Do you anticipate a long and healthy life?
Yes, I do anticipate a long and healthy life. I mean, because at the end of the day, even if you do everything correctly, you're not using steroids, you're taking care of your health, you're being active, you're eating well, something can still go wrong. Genetically, what you're predisposed to, or something can happen to you, get hurt. But with me, since I'm taking steroids, which is of course, putting my health at further risk, I do my best to mitigate that, putting my health at that risk. And I also understand that something could happen. So I'm aware of that. I'm not delusional, like, nothing's gonna happen to me, I'll be fine. There is something that could happen, but I anticipate a long and healthy life just as anyone else would.
Okay, so you're just not speed running it to 35 or anything like that?
No, I don't. I don't recommend anyone do that. And if someone says that they're doing that, they're not someone you probably would want to listen to.
That is a very good point. Oh, okay. Another interesting one, because like a lot of people talk about PEDs from the physical side of things, but for you, how have PEDs affected you mentally, both past and present?
So when I first started, they had more of a profound effect on me when I was younger, mainly to do with sex drive that was significantly heightened, aggressiveness, assertiveness, more emotional.
DTREN.
Yeah, emotional, more ups and downs. I would say though, it just depends on where your hormones are at and what I was running at the time, but there was times I felt really good. Like I'm talking about the best I've ever felt in my life. Like, oh, this is amazing. I want to do this for the rest of my life. You know, there's other times I felt terrible. I had no sex drive. I had no energy. I felt depressed. I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to do anything. There was other times I felt emotional. I felt more like how, you know, a girl would feel like on her period. I felt that before, like similar symptoms. But yeah, I would say for the most part now, with the knowledge I have, mentally, it's a lot more easygoing. Sometimes I get a little bit more assertiveness, a little bit more drive, or a little bit, I would say, more logical, less emotional. So I notice I'm sometimes more prone to maybe not have as much empathy as maybe as I did when I was natural, which is to be expected using PEDs. That could happen. But mentally, I would say as long as my hormones are in a good place, and I'm doing everything correctly, which I do my best to do, there isn't a huge significant change.
Okay. Now, I guess, because you said at the one point, you said depending on what you're running. So my next question for you would be, what was the substance that you found impacted you mentally the worst?
I would say definitely trenbolone. That was probably the one that impacted me the worst.
Classic.
And the reason why is because trenbolone just has a really strong effect on your hormones, especially like progesterone. It's really androgenic, it's really strong, but it has strong effects on the brain. That the other steroids, which they still do have effects on the brain, it's not as significant as trenbolone. So trenbolone was one that impacted me the most and tends to impact most people the most. There was a lot of up and downs with trenbolone.
Yeah, and you said, I think you were saying the other day, ironically enough, like having the name DTREN and stuff, like Tren's kind of like the one that you avoid now, right?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it anymore.
Yeah.
And the main reason why is it's not because of, the side effects were terrible or it ruined my life necessarily. It's more so I don't like the way I look on it. If I looked really good, I probably would still run it. But I don't look good on it, and you know, all the unnecessary added things like the mental change isn't really a positive. You don't want steroids to have a significant impact on your mental. You want to feel relatively normal. And something like trenbolone doesn't make you feel normal. You tend to feel like either a fucking Terminator or like you're going through menopause, you're on your period.
Interesting. Because you know exactly what it feels like to be on your period, right?
Yes.
All right, next one. When did you start, I guess I'll elaborate on it so it makes a little bit more sense, but when you first started on this stuff, when did you first start noticing the effects of what you were taking?
With steroids?
Whatever you started with.
The first day.
Okay.
Because my first cycle was a simple testosterone, 500 milligrams a week. That's what I was told at the time by others. That's what I started with. And I decided through my own decision, because I was a big Arnold fan, I love the golden era bodybuilders. That's what was a big reason why I started. Those guys like pumping iron. And what did Arnold say he ran, or people say Arnold ran, was Dianabol. So that first day in the gym, I took 20 milligrams of Dianabol, and I felt the effects instantly.
Really?
Yes, I felt a mental effect instantly, a surge of motivation, a surge of euphoria, and that first or second day, my endurance, like my muscular endurance, significantly improved.
Okay. And you said that was at 19?
Yes.
Do we have people now? I'm getting people reaching out to me talking about starting their first cycles at like 14 and 15.
That's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It's stupid, and that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is something you wish you knew before you chose to use PEDs?
Again, I wish I had more knowledge on my diet. And that's something that recently I've got a lot better at, but I wish I had better knowledge regarding building muscle and overall just maximizing my diet to the best of its abilities for my goal, which was building muscle when I started. So I wish I had that down. My results would have been better. I would have looked better from the start. But other than that, I wish I knew more about the side effects that could happen and how to negate them. Because side effects with PEDs, steroids, they're unavoidable. You are going to deal with side effects. That is a guarantee. It's a fact. If someone says, oh, I don't experience side effects, they're lying.
Right.
They're bullshitting you.
Right.
You will. It is a guarantee. But which ones you're going to experience is up to the individual and how they respond to those PEDs, their genetics, and what they're running and how much they're running.
Right.
So again, you're not gonna know. Someone could say, oh, I get this. Another person, they might not experience that, but they might experience something else. So it's different for each individual. I wish I just did even more research than what I did when before I started.
Is there anything that you look back on and you're like, okay, I took this substance for such a cycle, and you're just like, that was just a complete waste of time? Like,
I would say, yeah, the excessive dosages of trenbolone or running that as much as I did was a waste of time. And the main reason why is because it had a profound effect on my mental health, which is really important for building muscle and making sure everything, is at its best. So that kind of, and it was more of a negative to me, was running trenbolone. It made what at the time was, challenging for me, getting everything locked down. It made that even harder. So it added unnecessary stress onto my life, which made my results not as good. Compared to if I just if I wouldn't have ran it, or maybe just ran a lot less, I could have had better results. Not because I'm saying, oh, less is more. It would just, I would have had less total stress in my life.
Right.
And I could have had a better grip on actually being a sufficient human being,
right.
Which I did not feel. I felt like at times I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Did it ever get to the point where you just didn't even want to train and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, there was times I didn't want to.
That's interesting.
But for the most part, I've always been very driven and motivated to train. So if I did, it wouldn't last for very long. The thing with me is that I loved training. I always did. It's just I didn't care about the diet. I didn't care about optimizing my training. I was very stubborn. I'm going to do what I want to do and how I want to do it. And that wasn't really the right approach to have.
Hey, that's called being a teenager.
Yes, that's why it's not the smart idea to start steroids at a young age.
Oh, this is one that I hear people talk about a lot, and maybe I'm completely wrong. I feel like sometimes it's pretty overblown, but how much of a caloric change did you notice when you started to be enhanced? Like, did you notice that all of a sudden your output was way greater, or that you needed way more food, or was that just simply a result of you're putting on more muscle? Like, what did you notice in terms of overall food requirements for yourself?
I noticed that my appetite increased, but I would say I've always had a pretty big appetite.
Okay.
So it wasn't a significant increase to the point I'm like, man, I've never once in my life felt like I can't eat anymore. This is too much. Like, I can't handle this. It was always like, if anything, I overate most of my PED journey.
Yeah.
Because my food choices weren't the greatest, and like yourself, I have a really big appetite. It's just when I was, natural, I didn't gain the weight that I gained on steroids or the muscle. So I would eat a lot of food, and I would stay, around 195, 205, whatever my peak natural was, about a year of training. And it wouldn't be a huge increase in weight. But once I got on steroids, it's like I gained in a 1 year essentially like 50, 40 pounds.
Okay.
Maybe even more.
And that's one of those things that I've had to push back on people about, because a lot of times they'll tell me, oh, well, if so-and-so's on PEDs, then their maintenance calories go super high. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case.
No.
And it wouldn't be the case, because you're like, my appetite increased, but at the same time, you were putting on size.
Yeah.
So it's not like your appetite increased and you stayed the same size. Like,
No.
the food, your appetite outmatched your caloric
And
maintenance.
another thing is that the hormones, so wherever my hormones were at, had an effect on my appetite. So if my testosterone was higher and my estrogen was higher, I would have an insane appetite. If my even if my testosterone was high and my estrogen was really low, my appetite would disappear, and I wouldn't want to eat.
Well, you mentioned it being kind of like a woman being on their period and stuff.
Yeah.
So did you find that you were experiencing like super intense cravings for certain types of foods and stuff too?
Yeah. I didn't limit myself on anything. So pretty much my first 3.5, 4 years of PEDs, I ate whatever I wanted, when I wanted, how much I wanted. So it could be soda, it could be fast food 2-3 times a day.
Jeez.
It could be cake, it could be sweets, it could be candy. It didn't matter. I was just like, I'm gonna eat whatever I want. I still, my excuse was, oh, I still look good, I can get away with this.
Right.
No, what about your health? I was like, the fuck? I don't care. Excuse my language, but that was how I was when I was younger.
Understandable. And being in the mindset of somebody who went from being like what you would describe as skinny to being like bigger, it's like you're probably stuffing down the food, being like, well, getting bigger.
Yeah,
like,
that's
who
how I was,
cares?
because I always was really, really thin growing up. I think people don't realize, they see me now, like, oh, he's a pretty big guy. Why would he eat like that? You know, as a bodybuilder. But you got to understand, I was always someone that was considered severely underweight growing up throughout my teenage years. I mean, I didn't hit above 165 until I was 17 years old. And then from when I hit 18, I got to about 195, 205, around there. No, I got about 165, and then from 165 I got to 205 naturally, and in about a year, maybe a little bit less than. And then a year after that, I shot up to 254. So in a span of a year and a half, 2 years, I pretty much went up 100 pounds, close to it.
And for anybody that doesn't know at this point, how tall are you again?
6'2".
6'2", yeah. So 6'2" at around that 160 mark, like, you're gonna be a pretty thin guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Dang.
And I was smaller than that. I was 6'2" when I was 13, and I was probably 130 pounds. So I've always been tall and very skinny thin.
Somebody else was asking, what's your body fat percent? And if you had to guess right now, what would you say that your current body fat is?
It's about 10%.
10%?
Maybe 10.
I took a look at him yesterday, and it seems like he has a pretty good handle on it. I'd say 11.
Yeah, maybe 10, 11.
We're just equivalent at that point.
Yeah.
All right, and now the final question, the one that I'm actually most interested in. I've watched your social media journey, and I've seen your personality shift a lot over the years. I'd like to know kind of the thought process behind that, what happened. Were you always the same, and it was just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna portray myself differently, or was there an actual shift in your overall personality? Did you learn things where you were like, okay, I need to change this? What was the overall process behind that?
So in regards to my personality, there was a significant change
Really?
in that over time. Yeah. So of course on social media, we all have levels of a degree of expressing ourselves a certain way on camera. That's different from reality. But me, especially when I started, or even just a year ago, in how I see it, I was a different person, the way I thought. And when I think of myself from a year, 2 years ago, it's almost like I'm looking at a stranger in my mind. I see someone completely different. And it's not just, the steroids. You're using different steroids. People seem to think that it's whatever steroid I'm running is gonna dictate my personality. But that's really not how life works. You know, when you're 21 versus when you're 24, there's gonna be a significant change if, you're someone that likes to learn and improve as a human being. And so that's what happened with me over time, is that I had a way of living and a thought process when I was younger that over time decided to change. And you guys got to witness that on social media. And so you could see, you know, recent content of me now and be like, oh, look, he's going back to how he used to be. That's not true. What I'm doing is I'm posting content that people like, that people, you know, gets them motivated, gets them feeling a certain way. But without social media, when the camera's off, those changes over time I've made have stayed with me. So there's been a huge change in my personality, and that is just through trials and tribulations of just growing and being a man, like, you know, being a human being over time and making a lot of mistakes. I did make a lot of mistakes. And back then, the reputation I had was very well deserved. I wasn't necessarily a bad person, but yes, I was more abrasive, I was more aggressive, I was more emotional. I was someone that was a bit disrespectful at times. And I showed that, and I didn't care to show that. I was like, you know what? There was time periods where people say, oh, did you go heel, or why are you going back to being how you used to be? Because people associate, when they say that, I think they're saying, oh, you're going back to being bad, or you're going back to being evil. That's really what was always associated with me. And it's not that I'm an evil person. It's just when I started, I had this mentality. I don't care about how people feel. I don't care about what they say, what they think of me. I'm gonna do whatever I want, and if it hurts your feelings, too fucking bad. That was my mindset. And if you felt some kind of way, again, I would be like, cry about it. Yeah. But now my mindset has changed over time, being more mature. I noticed that what I say and how I come off can affect people. And through just me growing and maturing, that's transitioned with my content. So I would say there's been a huge personality change, probably more so than what people realize. And that's just me going through experiences and mainly making a lot of mistakes, which I did. Like, you think of me, DTREN, there really isn't a lot of positive, I guess, energy to that. Right. Like, people will say, oh, he's really entertaining. He's jacked, he's funny. But then what else? You say, oh, he was disrespectful. He said stuff that hurt people's feelings. He didn't take his diet seriously. Whatever people want to say, which I deserved. It was true. I did it. And it wasn't necessarily just an act. Like, oh, I'm gonna get on camera and I'm gonna portray myself as this badass dude that doesn't give a fuck. Reality, I was someone that lived like that. So yes, it was a character, but at the same time, that was just me during that time period. And over time, that's changed to where I am now. And I would say it is very significant to the point where sometimes I don't even recognize, or I look back at my older videos, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? So yes, there's been a huge change, and I'm someone, I believe in continuous change. So as a human being, I believe you should always change. Yep. Because that's how you get better, that's how you improve. If you're not changing, something isn't right. Right. Whether it's your mentality, there's always something you can get better at. So that's my mentality on that, and I'm glad I did, and I'm also glad I went through all those experiences and made those mistakes, because it made me who I am today.
Well, I'll say from the small amount of time that we've been together, like, I would not, if you had told me, if I'd only seen your content as DTREN versus the time that we've gotten to know each other, I wouldn't consider you the same person either. So
definitely not.
It's been really cool to see. Hey man, I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me on.
TNF out.